Hey guys, I'm going to introduce you to my newest study, which is going to be us reading through the Gospels together, verse by verse, breaking down each verse as we go. And we're going to do this in chronological order. We're going to read through the life of Christ from his birth through Jesus' ministries. And so, as a prelude to this study, I'm going to give you an idea of what Jesus was up against, which will help us understand conversations and relationships and preconceived ideas that are happening as we read. And so you can see them as we go through, and I'll point these out to you. Jesus was up against Pharisaic Judaism. When the Israelites came out of Babylon captivity, they understood that part of the reason for their captivity was because of their disobedience to the Mosaic law, the law of Moses. Don't get caught up on the names and the types of teachings and stuff, but hopefully you can follow along with the overall concept of what they believed and what they taught. So someone named Ezra started a school of the scribes. And a scribe is like a theologian from our time. Their job was to go through and expound all of the 613 commandments to provide a clear understanding of the law to keep from breaking it. So that's a possible another divine punishment. Like I said, we just came out of captivity here. And so they're breaking down what they already have as the Mosaic law to have a clearer understanding. After the scribes, the next generation, they took this one step further and they added more rules around the law. So look at it like a fence. And so if you're not going to break through this fence, you're definitely not going to break one of the laws. Now, as we move forward from each generation, they taught that there were more than the written 613 Mosaic laws, and that Moses had memorized these laws after he wrote down what he was commanded to write. He memorized the rest. Thus, these were passed down through Joshua, then Judges, and the prophets, and so on, and all the way to these scribes. And so they wrote all of these down, and this became known as the Mishnah. And so you're going to hear this word throughout scripture as we study. And so you have the scribes, and then you have rabbis as teachers here. Okay, so you have the rabbinical law. You're going to hear that. You're going to hear being taught under certain rabbis. Okay, so you went from someone who expounded the law to somebody who added to the law to generations who not only added to the law, but then they expound around those rules. Okay, so we have so many extra added contingencies on the Mosaic law, and this is what was taught. And so this is what you're going to hear as the Mishnah. And another way to say it is the tradition of the elders. So you're going to hear that description as well. So they thought Jesus was going to be a Pharisee when he came. So, and he was going to follow the Mishnah, not the law of Moses. Jesus was the only Jew to ever come and live, the only human to ever come and live through the law and obey the law perfectly. Okay. But in turn, he broke many. Okay. And I know air quotes aren't a thing, but we're going to go with it. So many of the laws of the Mishnah. And so thus you're now going to become aware of the type of controversy that he's up against, the constant battle about the Sabbath and what you can do on this day, and can you heal someone here, and whose money do you owe, and whose sin is worse. And they're going to constantly come at him. And that's because they expected him to follow Pharisaic law. So you're going to hear it as rabbinical law, Pharisaic law, the Mishnah. All of those together are the Mishnah here. I would like to take you into some scripture in Joshua to prove to you that there are no added laws. Every law, all 613 that was given by God to Moses, was written down. And so we're going to go into Joshua, and I'm going to go ahead and start in verse 30 and read through 35. I'll break it down here as we read. So now Joshua built an altar to the Lord of God of Israel in Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded the children of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of whole stones over which no man has welded an iron tool. And they offered on it burnt offerings to the Lord and sacrificed peace offerings. And there, in the presence of the children of Israel, he wrote on the stones a copy of the law of Moses. So he is going to be Joshua here. So he's writing on these stones that was commanded in the law of Moses. Okay. that he wrote a copy of the law of Moses, which he had written. So he had written is going to be Moses. So he is copying an exact replica of the law. He's copying the exact law down to transcribe it here. Then all of Israel, with their elders, officers, and judges, stood on either side of the ark. The priests, the Levites, who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord, the stranger as well as he who was born among them. So we are talking an incredible amount of people. So we skip right over this here. It's just we read fast. And so in verse 33, all Israel, okay, all of Israel with their elders, okay, their officers, their judges, strangers, and those born into it. So we have all of the people here witnessing this transcribing here, this copying of the law. So let's carry on here. Okay, half of them were in front of Mount, we're going to say Gerizim, because I don't speak Hebrew or Greek, and so we're going to go with that. And half of them in front of Mount Ebal, as Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded before that they should bless the people of Israel. And afterward, he read all the words of the law, all the words, okay, the blessings and the cursings, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There was not one word of all that Moses had commanded, which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel, with the women, the little ones, the strangers who were living among them. So again, we've reiterated this importance of how many people are present during this copying of the law. And let's go back here. So 35, there was not a word of all that Moses had commanded, which Joshua did not read. And we know he's reading what was written. So there's not one single word that Moses commanded that is not written down. There are no extra laws. These were all added. As soon as we got through the school of the scribes, they had such a fear around following the Mosaic law that they continued and continued and continued to add to this law. Now, mind you, everybody doesn't have a Bible in their hand. They may not even have a Bible for several hundreds of people. They have the scripture here in front of them to compare to themselves. So what a blessing it is that we can go back to study this, to see with much broader eyes of what's happening here. But they didn't have that. They only had it who they trusted to expound the law, and then thus verbally was passed down through generation to generation. And so this here is why they're expecting Jesus to be like the Pharisees, as opposed to just following the law of Moses.